Welcome to another deep dive with us. Today we're diving into the world of the Portuguese language.
A fascinating choice.
It is. We're going to explore its history, its global reach, and even uh, some of the things that make it both challenging and rewarding to learn for those who are maybe thinking about picking it up. We're using an excerpt from the Linguid blog article called The Portuguese Language, Everything You Need to Know.
Great article.
Yeah, it's going to be a good kind of springboard for our conversation today. I think learning a new language, I don't know, it's kind of like opening a door to a whole new world, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. I completely agree. It's a journey of cultural discovery. And I think the Portuguese language, with its history, with its global reach, offers a particularly captivating journey.
It really does. So before we get into the really nitty-gritty of this language, maybe we can kind of paint a picture for our listener of where they can actually hear Portuguese being spoken today. And I'll give you a hint. It's way more than just Portugal and Brazil.
Mm-hmm. Prepare to be surprised.
I like that.
Yeah.
So are you saying that it's spoken on multiple continents?
It's true. Portuguese has a global footprint. It really speaks to the journeys of those explorers during the Age of Exploration. We're talking multiple continents here, each with its own unique Portuguese accent and dialect.
Wow, so they were like the original language ambassadors in a way.
You could say that. Their voyages are just one chapter in a much longer story, though.
Okay.
To truly understand the reach of Portuguese, we need to rewind way back, go back to its roots in ancient Iberia. So, picture the Iberian Peninsula under Roman rule centuries ago.
Right.
The Roman soldiers stationed there, they brought with them their own version of Latin, right? What they called vulgar Latin. And it's this language that really laid the foundation for what would eventually become Portuguese.
So are you telling me that modern-day Portuguese sprung from the everyday speech of Roman soldiers?
It is fascinating, isn't it?
That's incredible.
But the story doesn't end there, right? Over time, Portuguese, it started to, take on influences from other languages, weaving them into its own unique kind of linguistic tapestry. Take, for example, the Arabic influence.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, think about words like sugar, which in Portuguese is açúcar, or olive, which translates to azeitona. These little linguistic traces offer this hint at the Moorish conquest of the Iberian Peninsula.
Wow, yeah.
And its lasting impact on Portuguese culture, even down to the food on the table.
I never even made that connection before. It's so interesting.
Yeah,
So each word holds a story, a history.
exactly. And speaking of stories, let's fast forward a little bit, back to those explorers we talked about earlier.
Okay.
They didn't just sail the high seas, they carried their language with them. They were planting these linguistic seeds wherever they landed.
So the language was actively, being shaped by these interactions.
Precisely. The Portuguese we hear today, in all its diverse forms, is a testament to those interactions. Which brings us to an essential point. Portuguese isn't just one language.
Right.
It's more like a family with distinct branches that reflect its incredible journey across continents.
A family.
Yeah.
Okay, I like that analogy. So I'm guessing European Portuguese and Brazilian Portuguese are the two most well-known siblings.
You got it. But just like any family, there are some lesser-known members, too.
Right. And I bet just like siblings, they don't always get along.
Exactly.
I mean, they share some DNA, but they've also, kind of grown up with their own unique experiences.
Exactly. Imagine someone from Lisbon trying to have a conversation with someone from Rio de Janeiro.
Right.
They might understand the gist, but the differences in pronunciation, slang, even certain words could lead to I imagine, some comical misunderstandings.
I can only imagine. It's like when I went to visit family in the South and I couldn't understand half of what they were saying.
Yeah, same language, but a totally different flavor.
Exactly. So you mentioned other branches of the Portuguese family tree. What are those lesser-known dialects all about?
Well, for starters, there's African Portuguese,
Okay.
which thrives in countries like Angola and Mozambique. These dialects are rooted in the Portuguese spoken during the colonial period, but they've also developed their own distinct character, influenced by the diverse languages and cultures of Africa. Then you have Asian Portuguese, adding its own spice to the mix. This branch took root in places like Goa, India, and East Timor, remnants of Portugal's once vast empire.
Wow. Portuguese has really made its mark all over the world.
It has.
It's like a linguistic passport to a mix of cultures.
It really is.
But before we get too caught up in wanderlust, maybe we should talk about the kind of elephant in the room here. Learning a new language Even one as cool as Portuguese can be a challenge.
Yeah. You're absolutely right.
What are some of the challenges?
Mastering any language takes effort, and Portuguese definitely has its tricky bits. Those nasal vowels, for
Oh,
instance,
yeah.
can be quite the tongue twister.
Yeah.
And don't even get me started on the verb conjugations.
Oh, man. And we can't forget that guttural R.
Right. It's a sound that takes some serious practice to get right.
It does.
But the rewards are well worth the effort. Just imagine yourself, I don't know, strolling through the streets of Lisbon, ordering those delicious pastéis de nata like a pro, or immersing yourself in the energy of, like, Brazil's carnival, understanding every word of those catchy samba tunes.
Okay, now you're just teasing me. And it's not just about, those cultural experiences. Learning Portuguese, I feel like it's like giving your brain a workout too, right?
Absolutely. Studies have shown that learning a new language, especially one as complex as Portuguese, can have such a remarkable impact on cognitive function.
It's like building mental muscles.
Yeah, it makes your brain sharper, more agile.
So it's not just about like, you know, impressing the locals with my Portuguese. It's about like boosting my brain power too.
Exactly.
I'm all for that. So what kind of like mental benefits are we talking about here?
Well, for starters, language learning has been linked to improved memory.
Okay.
Think of it this way. Every new word you learn in Portuguese, it's like you're creating a new connection in your brain, strengthening its ability to, retain information.
Wow.
And it's not just memory that gets a boost.
Yeah.
Studies suggest that multilingual individuals, they might even have an edge when it comes to problem solving and multitasking.
Yeah.
Their brains are more accustomed to juggling different sets of rules, linguistic rules, which seems to translate into enhanced cognitive flexibility in other areas of life as well.
That's fascinating. So by learning Portuguese, I could be like giving my brain a competitive edge.
It's true.
Hmm.
And there's more. Some studies suggest that learning a second language might delay the onset of age-related cognitive decline, like Alzheimer's disease.
Wow, that's incredible.
It's like giving your brain a protective shield.
Okay, now you're just making me feel guilty for not learning Portuguese sooner. But in all seriousness, it's incredible to think about the potential impact on brain health.
It is truly remarkable, but let's not forget about the more, tangible benefits as well.
Okay.
Imagine the doors that learning Portuguese could open in fields like business, diplomacy, translation, even music. The possibilities are as diverse as the language itself.
It's true. The practical applications really are kind of endless when you think about it. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, maybe we should take a moment to recap what we've learned about this language so far.
Excellent point. It's easy to get swept up in the excitement, but yeah, taking a moment to consolidate our knowledge is key.
Yeah, yeah. So where did we start? Ah, yes, with those Roman soldiers in ancient Iberia.
Right.
It's crazy to think that the seeds of modern-day Portuguese were planted by their everyday speech.
It really is fascinating.
And let's not forget the Arabic influence, adding its own unique flavor to the language.
Yeah, those linguistic traces are like these little delicious reminders of the Moorish presence in the Iberian Peninsula and the lasting impact on Portuguese culture.
Exactly. And,
Yeah.
it's amazing to think that, thanks to those adventurous Portuguese explorers, the language didn't just stay put.
Right.
It, sailed across continents, establishing this global family of dialects, from the charming streets of Lisbon to the vibrant beaches of Brazil, all the way to the shores of Africa and Asia. Portuguese has really, truly made its mark on the world.
It really has. And we can't forget about the remarkable diversity within Portugal and Brazil themselves, too.
Right.
We're talking about an array of accents and regional variations that make learning Portuguese so much more than just memorizing words and grammar rules.
Yeah.
It's about tapping into a rich tapestry of cultures and communities.
It's about embracing those quirks,
Yeah.
the things that make each dialect unique. And I think, as we've been discussing while learning Portuguese, it has its challenges. Those nasal vowels and verb conjugations, they can be a little tricky.
They can be tricky.
The rewards are immeasurable.
For sure.
It's a journey that promises to enrich your life in countless ways, I think.
It really does. You know what I find so fascinating about this?
What's that?
Language. It's not static.
Right.
It doesn't just stay the same. It's constantly evolving.
Yeah.
And all those quirks and those variations we were just talking about, they're not just remnants of the past, right?
Right.
They're proof that the language is alive and thriving.
Right.
And it's embracing new influences and writing its own future, one conversation at a time. I love that. That's a beautiful way to put it. And you know what? I think even if they never become fluent in Portuguese, I think simply recognizing its complexity, its evolution, I think it gives them a whole new perspective on the world, on other people. It highlights like the beauty of linguistic diversity
Yeah,
and how it really reflects, our shared human experience.
it really does. And, who knows, maybe this deep dive will inspire our listener to kind of go on their own linguistic journey, explore other languages and cultures too.
Yeah, I hope so. It's like we've opened a door to a whole world of like linguistic adventures.
Exactly, exactly. The world of language is so vast and so fascinating.
It really is.
So to our listener out there, keep asking those questions, keep exploring, keep your ears open to this like symphony of languages all around you. A huge thank you to you for joining us on this deep dive into the Portuguese language. This was really, really fun.
It was a pleasure.
And to our listeners, we encourage you to keep those linguistic fires burning. And we'll see you next time on the deep dive.